The connection between archaeology and the Bible is not just a matter of historical curiosity. It is a crucial intersection for a deep understanding of the Holy Scriptures. Archaeology serves as a lens through which we can view the layers of time and culture that make up the biblical context, revealing details that confirm and illuminate the narratives we have read for millennia. The Bible, considered by many as a book of faith and spiritual instruction, is also a historical document that describes civilizations, kingdoms, and events that are often corroborated by archaeological discoveries. For example, excavations at sites like Jericho and Jerusalem have unearthed artifacts that allow archaeologists and theologians to verify the accuracy of numerous biblical accounts. In Luke 3:1-2, the biblical text offers a rich historical description of the environment in which John the Baptist began his ministry, mentioning political figures such as Tiberius Caesar and Pontius Pilate. Archaeologists have found inscriptions that confirm the reigns and governments of these figures, providing an authenticated backdrop for the events described in the Gospels. Furthermore, archaeology can clarify passages that at first glance may seem obscure. The discovery of worship practices, inscriptions, and household utensils helps us better understand the daily lives of the people mentioned in the Bible, enriching our interpretation of the Scriptures and strengthening our faith in their truthfulness and relevance. This intertwining of faith and archaeological science challenges us to look at the Bible with renewed respect, not just as a spiritual work, but also as a reliable record of historical events. Through this interdisciplinary study, we can more fully appreciate the complexity and beauty of God's Word, enhancing our understanding and our connection to the sacred past. Jericho and the Walls. The story of the walls of Jericho, detailed in Joshua 6, is one of the most emblematic biblical narratives, where faith and direct obedience to God result in an impressive miracle. The text recounts that, under divine command, the Israelites marched around the city once a day for 6 days and 7 times on the 7th day. At the sound of the trumpets, and with a great shout from the people, the city's walls collapsed, allowing Israel to conquer Jericho. This account is not only a powerful lesson in faith, but also a focus of intense archaeological interest. Excavations at Jericho, particularly those conducted by Kathleen Kenyon in the 1950s, revealed evidence of multiple layers of destruction. Although there is debate among archaeologists about the exact dating of these layers and their direct correlation with the biblical account, what is undeniable is that Jericho was a city of great significance and suffered several destructions throughout its history. Joshua 6:20 states, "When the people heard the sound of the trumpet, they shouted with a great shout, and the wall fell down flat. Thus the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city." This archaeological detail of the layers of destruction may not unequivocally confirm the miracle, but it certainly indicates that significant events, including sites of destruction, occurred in Jericho, which could be seen as a confluence between archaeological findings and biblical accounts. Moreover, artifacts found, such as charred grain pots, suggest that the city was conquered quickly and not through a prolonged siege, which is consistent with the biblical narrative that the city was taken in a short period after the Israelites' marches. This specific point is fascinating because it aligns archaeology with the biblical description that Jericho was captured quickly and decisively, suggesting destruction at the time of the harvest. For the faithful and scholars of the Bible, these archaeological findings offer an intriguing window into the past. They not only provide a physical context for the biblical accounts, but also challenge scholars to consider how divine interventions are described and can be understood in a historical and archaeological context. In summary, the story of Jericho is a vibrant example of how archaeology and theology can engage in dialogue. Although archaeological discoveries may not directly prove all the miraculous aspects of the biblical texts, they offer a substantive backdrop that confirms that the events described in the Scriptures are based on real people, places, and cultures. This fusion of faith and evidence creates a fertile ground for reflection on the power of biblical stories, not just as spiritual teachings, but also as records of a tangible and impactful past. The kingdoms of Israel and Judah. The history of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah is central to understanding the Old Testament. Much of what we know about these kingdoms comes from detailed biblical records in books like Kings and Chronicles. However, archaeology has played a crucial role in validating the historicity of these accounts. particularly regarding significant figures such as King David and King Solomon. One of the most notable discoveries that corroborate the existence of these kingdoms and their monarchs is the Tel Dan stele. Found in 1993, this stone inscription dates back to the 9th century BC and mentions the House of David, representing a direct archaeological testimony of the Davidic lineage. This finding is of immense importance, as it is the first known mention of the name David outside the biblical texts, solidifying his historical figure beyond the sacred narratives. 1 Kings 2:11 states, "The days that David reigned over Israel were 40 years." This biblical assertion, now supported by archaeological evidence such as the Tel Dan stele, provides a solid foundation for the historical and theological study of the kings of Israel. Moreover, discoveries such as seals and other artifacts inscribed with the names of biblical figures from that era allow a more tangible connection to the characters mentioned in the Bible. Another significant archaeological piece is the discovery of fortifications and building complexes at ancient sites like Hazor, Megiddo, and Gaza. These structures are often associated with the constructions attributed to Solomon in 1 Kings 9:15, where it reads that the king built Hazor, Megiddo, and Gaza. These findings not only corroborate the account of Solomon's grand constructions, but also illustrate the power and influence of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah at that time. Therefore, archaeology does not just serve to verify historical facts, it enriches our understanding of the biblical texts, providing a broader and deeper context. For example, the discoveries of Solomon's fortified cities help us better understand the political and economic context of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, as well as shedding light on aspects of administration and daily life during the reigns of these kings. By studying the kingdoms of Israel and Judah through an archaeological lens, we obtain a more complete and nuanced view of these political entities so fundamental to the biblical narrative. These studies reinforce the veracity and richness of the sacred texts, allowing believers and scholars to have a deeper appreciation of both the human and divine aspects in the stories of faith and royalty that shaped the history of God's people. The House of David. The Davidic dynasty is one of the fundamental pillars in the history and theology of the Old Testament, playing a central role in how the Israelites viewed their relationship with God and the promise of an eternal kingdom. The discovery of the Tel Dan stele in the early 90s revolutionized our archaeological and historical understanding by externally confirming the existence of the House of David mentioned in the inscription. This stele, dating from the 9th century BC, bears an Aramaic inscription that celebrates the victory of Hazael, king of Aram, over the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. The text explicitly refers to the House of David, the term used to describe the dynasty founded by David, solidifying its historical existence beyond biblical accounts. This discovery is crucial because until then, the existence of David was attested only through biblical tradition, specifically in books like 2 Samuel and 1 Kings. In 2 Samuel 7:16, we find the divine promise to David through the prophet Nathan. "Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever." This promise is the theological foundation for the messianic hope that permeates the Old Testament and directly influences the New Testament. The archaeological confirmation of the Davidic lineage not only validates the historicity of David as a central figure, but also reinforces our understanding of the divine promise of a perpetual kingdom. Beyond the Tel Dan stele, other archaeological discoveries have provided insights into the era of David and his descendants. Excavations in Jerusalem, for example, have revealed structures that can be dated to the Davidic period, including a possible palace. Such discoveries help illuminate descriptions in 1 Kings, which detail the territorial expansions and constructions carried out by David and Solomon. These archaeological findings allow theologians and historians to better understand the political and cultural context in which the biblical texts were written. They provide a tangible backdrop for the biblical narrative, reinforcing the fidelity and accuracy of the sacred texts. Thus, by studying the House of David, we are not just exploring an ancient history, but we are discovering the roots of Judeo-Christian faith. The confirmation of the Davidic lineage through archaeology not only enriches our understanding of the Bible, but also strengthens faith in the promise of a just and eternal governance, as symbolized in the figure of David and later realized in Jesus Christ. This understanding unites faith and history, inviting believers to deeper reflection on God's promises and their manifestation throughout time. The Babylonian exile. The Babylonian exile is one of the most significant and transformative episodes in the history of the Jewish people, profoundly marking their religious and cultural identity. The biblical narrative about this exile, detailed in books like Jeremiah and Lamentations, is corroborated by rich archaeological evidence that includes the famous Babylonian tablets. These tablets, found at ancient Babylonian sites, are administrative records listing names, transactions, and everyday events. Among these records are names clearly Jewish, evidencing the presence of Jewish exiles in Babylon, exactly as described in the scriptures. This finding is crucial for the historical validation of the biblical account of the exile, as expressed in Jeremiah 29, 1-2, where the prophet sends a letter to the exiles in Babylon, listing their names and specific situations. The verse says, "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon." This text not only clarifies the event of the exile, but also reflects the ongoing divine concern for his people, even in a foreign land. The Babylonian tablets reinforce this narrative, showing that the Jews maintained their identities and cultural practices during captivity. Additionally, other archaeological findings like the Nabonidus stone, which mentions King Nebuchadnezzar the great architect of the Jewish exile, provide further context about the time. These artifacts not only confirm the existence of the biblical characters mentioned, but also help better understand the political and social context in which the biblical texts were written. This period of exile was also prophetic, with figures like Ezekiel and Daniel emerging as critical and visionary voices that influenced not only Jewish theology but also Christian. The discovery of texts that allude to these prophets in the Babylonian context helps illustrate the dynamics between biblical prophecy and the reality experienced by the exiles. The archaeological study of the Babylonian exile, therefore, offers a unique window into understanding the conditions under which the Jewish faith was preserved and transformed. It reveals how adversity was transformed into a source of spiritual strength and collective identity, fulfilling prophetic words and the divine promise of restoration, as expressed in later books that narrate the return to Jerusalem. By connecting these archaeological findings with biblical texts, we strengthen our understanding not only of historical events, but also of the theological development they inspired. This enriched understanding allows for a deeper appreciation of the significance of the Babylonian exile in biblical history and its lasting impact on Judaism and Christianity. Everyday life in Israel. The everyday life of the ancient Israelites is a fascinating aspect that brings us closer to understanding what it was like to live in biblical times. Archaeology has played a crucial role in shedding light on this aspect through the discovery of everyday objects that offer us a tangible view of the daily life described in the scriptures. One of the biblical texts that best illustrate daily life is Proverbs 31, which describes the virtues and daily activities of a virtuous woman. The chapter mentions a variety of tasks and objects, such as the spindle and loom, which were fundamental in Israel's domestic economy. Excavations at Israeli sites often reveal these artifacts, along with other household utensils like pottery, coins, and agricultural tools, corroborating the uses and customs mentioned in the Bible. For example, Proverbs 31:19 says, "She stretches out her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff." This reference to weaving tools is directly related to the numerous archaeological findings of spindles and loom weights, demonstrating the importance of weaving in Israeli society. These artifacts not only confirm the veracity of the practices described, but also provide context about the role of women in the domestic economy and textile production. Furthermore, kitchen utensils and food remains found in excavations help us understand the dietary habits and culinary practices of the Israelites. The discovery of ancient ovens and vessels for grains suggests food storage and preparation practices that are consistent with biblical verses about preparing and sharing meals. Other artifacts such as oil lamps and personal seals offer insights into religious and social practices. The lamps, for instance, can be related to passages like Psalm 119, 105, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path," illustrating the literal and symbolic use of light in Israeli life and spirituality. Thus, archaeology not only validates the historical accuracy of biblical texts, but also enriches our understanding of the context in which these texts were written. By studying everyday artifacts, we gain a richer perspective on how biblical instructions and wisdom were experienced in practice, influencing the behavior and beliefs of people. This interaction between archaeological findings and the Bible transforms our reading of the Scriptures from a collection of ancient texts to a living, breathing narrative full of real people, facing real challenges and living their faith in the context of their daily lives. The early Christian churches. The early Christian communities formed the foundation upon which modern Christianity was built. Archaeology has uncovered traces of these early communities, providing concrete evidence of their practices and places of worship. One of the most significant discoveries in this context is the identification of worship houses in Capernaum, which offer a tangible glimpse into the life and faith of the early followers of Christ. In the Acts of the Apostles, we have a vibrant narrative about the growth and expansion of the early church, while the epistles of Paul offer insights into the doctrines, challenges, and organization of the early Christian communities. These texts not only provide a theological and spiritual framework, but are also corroborated by archaeological findings that illustrate where and how these early Christians worshipped. For example, in Capernaum, known as the City of Jesus, archaeologists have discovered what is considered one of the earliest synagogues, and beneath it, the remains of a house that many believe to have been used as one of the first Christian meeting places. This house, often referred to as the House of Peter, is mentioned in the Gospels, Mark 1:29-31, and shows signs of communal and religious use dating back to the 1st century. These findings are vital because they offer a physical connection to the descriptions in the Acts of the Apostles, such as when Paul speaks in Acts 2:46, "Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts." Archaeology confirms that the early Christian communities often met in homes, a fact that underscores the organic and decentralized nature of the early church. Furthermore, the discovery of these worship houses also sheds light on Pauline references to the importance of hospitality and community, as in Romans 16:5, where Paul greets the church that meets at the home of Prisca and Aquila. These spaces were not just places of worship, but also centers of community and solidarity, fundamental for the survival and growth of the nascent Christian faith. Therefore, by studying these early worship spaces through archaeology, we gain a new appreciation for how the practices described in the Scriptures were actually lived. This not only validates the historicity of the Scriptures, but also enriches our understanding of how doctrines were practiced and experienced. This interaction between biblical text and archaeological evidence strengthens our connection with the early Christians, showing that their lives and faith were as real and vibrant as ours today. It challenges us to reflect on the roots of our own faith and how the traditions and teachings of the apostles continue to shape contemporary Christianity. Prophecies and findings. Archaeology has played a crucial role in illuminating and, in many cases, corroborating biblical prophecies about historical events, such as the destruction of cities mentioned in the prophetic books. A striking example is found in the book of Ezekiel, where specific predictions are made about the fall of nations and cities that were indeed confirmed by archaeological discoveries. Ezekiel, a prophet of the Babylonian exile, provides remarkable details about the fate of various cities and kingdoms. For example, in Ezekiel 26, there is a detailed prophecy about the destruction of Tyre. The biblical text describes how Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, would come against Tyre and completely destroy it. Archaeology confirms that Tyre underwent several siege campaigns and was eventually destroyed and rebuilt several times throughout history. Ezekiel 26:4 states, "They will destroy the walls of Tyre and pull down her towers. I will scrape away her rubble and make her a bare rock." Excavations in the area where Tyre was located have revealed layers of destruction that correspond to the period mentioned in the prophecy. These findings provide an impressive archaeological validation of the prophet's words, showing the accuracy with which the events were anticipated. Beyond Tyre, archaeology has also corroborated prophecies related to other cities like Nineveh and Babylon. Nineveh, for example, was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, and its destruction was prophesied in Nahum 3:7, where it is stated that the city would be abandoned and desolate. Excavations in Nineveh revealed that the city was destroyed in 612 BC, in line with the prophesied period. The discovery of the ruins of Babylon is also a powerful testimony. Jeremiah 51:37 prophesies that Babylon would become heaps of ruins. Today, the site of Babylon is a field of ruins, literally fulfilling the prophecy that the city would become desolate. These correlations between biblical prophecies and archaeological findings are not mere coincidences. They provide concrete evidence that strengthens the credibility of the scriptures as historical and prophetic sources. This type of validation is essential for understanding not only the historical context of these prophecies, but also their theological significance. Studying these connections, we realize that biblical prophecies were not mere speculation, but informed visions that reflected a deep understanding of the geopolitical movements of the time, often guided by the divine inspiration perceived by the prophets. This reaffirms the value of the scriptures as both a historical and spiritual document, providing a solid foundation for faith and further studies. The interaction between archaeology and biblical prophecies enriches our understanding of the Bible, showing that beyond a book of faith and morals, it is also a record of historical events that have repercussions to this day, reaffirming the ongoing relevance of prophetic words in the modern world. Controversies and debates. Biblical archaeology, while often validating the historicity of the scriptures, also generates debates and controversies, especially when archaeological findings seem to contradict or complicate traditional interpretations of the Bible. One of the most intense and significant debates is related to the location of the temple in Jerusalem, a topic of deep religious, historical, and political significance. The Bible details the construction of Solomon's first temple in 1 Kings 6 and its subsequent destruction by Babylon, as well as the reconstruction and reforms of the Second Temple in books like Ezra and Nehemiah. Traditionally, it is believed that both temples were located on what is today known as the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. However, some recent interpretations based on archaeological findings and historical analyses have proposed that the exact location might have been slightly different within the area that today comprises the Old City of Jerusalem. This debate is complicated by archaeological restrictions on the Temple Mount, a site sacred to both Jews and Muslims, which limits further excavations and in-depth investigations. Thus, much of the debate is based on the reinterpretation of existing evidence and the study of ancient texts and surrounding structures. For example, descriptions of the location and orientation of the temple in relation to other known points in Jerusalem are used to argue for or against the traditional location. In 2 Chronicles 3:1, it is mentioned that Solomon began to build the temple on Mount Moriah, where God appeared to David, his father. The identification of Mount Moriah with the Temple Mount is widely accepted, but discussions about the accuracy of this location persist due to variations in historical accounts and archaeological findings. Moreover, some scholars question the extent and opulence of the temple described in the biblical texts, contrasting them with the lack of direct archaeological evidence of such riches. This leads to debates about biblical interpretation, the historical accuracy of the scriptures, and understanding the socio-economic context of Israel at that time. These controversies are not merely academic. They have profound implications for theology, religious practice, and modern politics. For example, the understanding of the location and nature of the temple can affect contemporary religious beliefs and practices, as well as political negotiations in an already tense region. Thus, while archaeology can offer fascinating insights into the biblical past, it also challenges us to reconsider and sometimes redefine our understanding of sacred narratives. Through these debates, we are reminded that the pursuit of biblical truth is complex and multifaceted, requiring an approach that balances faith, interpretation, and scientific evidence. This ongoing dialogue between the Bible and archaeology is crucial for deepening our understanding of sacred history and its impact on the modern world. Exploring the connection between archaeology and the Bible, we see how archaeological findings not only complement our understanding of the scriptures, but also reinforce the Christian faith by providing a tangible foundation for historical and theological narratives. Each discovery leads us to a deeper appreciation of the complexities and richness of God's Word, uniquely and powerfully uniting faith and history. Archaeology has the power to transform ancient words into living realities, as seen in the numerous artifacts, structures, and inscriptions that corroborate biblical events and characters. For example, the Tel Dan stele and the evidence of destruction layers in Jericho provide historical validation that transcends the boundaries of faith to enter the realm of provable historical reality. These discoveries reaffirm passages like Luke 1:4, where Luke expresses the desire to write an orderly account so that we may know the certainty of the things we have been taught. These archaeological findings not only confirm historical details, but also enrich our understanding of the cultural, social, and political contexts of the biblical era. This allows us to see the Bible not just as a book of spiritual doctrines, but as a record of human interactions, governance, conflicts, and faith in action. For example, by studying the early churches and worship houses in Capernaum, we can feel the closeness of the early Christian community, their dedication, and how they lived out Christ's teachings. This reinforces passages like Hebrews 10:25, which exhorts us not to give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but to encourage one another, especially as you see the day approaching. Therefore, archaeology serves as a bridge between the past and the present, allowing faith to be based not only on transmitted traditions, but also on concrete evidence. By doing this, we are encouraged to reflect on how these discoveries affect our interpretation of the Bible and strengthen our faith. It is an opportunity to reassess and reaffirm our beliefs, recognizing that biblical truth is multifaceted and deeply rooted in both history and spirit. Thus, as we continue to uncover and learn from archaeology, we are invited on a journey of renewed and enriched faith, where each stone and each papyrus fragment brings us closer to the reality of the Scriptures and the God they reveal. This synthesis between archaeology and faith not only strengthens our belief, but also expands our ability to understand and appreciate the Bible as a source of historical and spiritual truth. Like the video, then share it with someone special in your life. Grace and peace, brothers.